Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And if Trafton's out there, what's up, dude? Let me tell you how I looked at the wall last week, and there it was, the calendar. It occurred to me that while the solar system spun and the particles flashed in and out, while the eons passed and mountainous rocks lurched above the fermenting valleys as those valleys grew stalky and leafy and green, while existential waves of calling energy crisscrossed the earth and cosmos in unimaginable complexity, along came a guy with a stopwatch. "There's the moon," he said, checking the time. Then he said, "There's the moon. There's the moon. There's the moon. Hey, where's the moon? I expected to see it, yet my expectations have been eclipsed by appearance." Then he said, "Oh, there's the moon, and there's the moon again." Pretty soon everybody was counting and measuring and marking. Accordingly, since then, and to our benefit, so they say, it has been systematically predicted and so declared that as of last Tuesday at 5:18 p.m., for the spot on the earth that is the home of Flint Talk Radio, summer gave way to fall. Finally, my corduroys are in fashion. Changing Your Other Mind is the name of the program. I am the host, David Schelter. From where I am, out across the waves of whatever it is that makes waves, to all the places a listener might be. Warm greetings and welcome to the show. Changing Your Other Mind is about the influence of the subconscious mind, the other mind, on our everyday behavior. Sometimes the influence of the other mind pushes us into a darkened room of sticky spider webs, only thick and heavy, like some gooey water-soaked fishing net. Sometimes at the same time, the other mind makes the spider web speak, and they tell us we are stuck, and our fears and suffocation are inevitable and necessary. The truth of the matter is that they might be inevitable and necessary. But when we are done thrashing and calling for God or mommy to make it stop, and we realize we are neither dead nor dying, we can look more closely at our webbing, and we will discover it can be removed. Such removal may well be possible, yet there's a phrase we can invoke, a phrase most of us have heard and likely used, handy delineator of a particular and familiar idea that it is. The phrase goes something like this: easier said than done. And as you may surmise, anything easier said than done is easier said than done. I could say, I'm going to eat a healthy diet. We would all think, easier said than done, especially when fresh pizza smells so good, or when pecan sandies with real chunks of real pecans baked right in wash so scrumptiously with cold, whole milk. I could say, I'm going to get my money straight. We would all think, easier said than done, especially when all the businesses we buy from are also determined to get their money straight. And so they charge us an extra nickel or $5 each time we spend. I could say, I'm going to score tonight. We would all think my stand-up routine has a good opener. And we would howl, easier said than done, especially when I fall asleep on the couch with two remotes in my lap. The truth of the matter is that once we realize the spider webs of the other mind can be removed, we feel we should do it without effort. We know they are neither permanent nor deadly, so releasing ourselves from their suffocating hold should be a straightforward procedure. We have to realize that straightforward means straightforward, not easy. I would not join the line of people saying releasing ourselves from the spider webs of restrictions is only a matter of procedure, unless they added, yet nearly always easier said than done. Sometimes when our regular mind knows the thing is easier said than done, it still believes it can be done. That's when the other mind likes to pipe in and say that sometimes to do that thing is way much harder than it seems to be, and that it is not easier said than done, but that it can be said only, and it cannot be done. Not by you, anyway. Impossible and painful in the attempt, painful in the failure, painful in the shame for the vanity it took to think it could be done in the first place. These are only a few of the promises the lying other mind gives you as it attempts to persuade you to forfeit your ideas of freedom from suffocating spiderwebs. Now, sometimes the spiderwebs of the other mind are worse than sticky. Sometimes they are like strings of glass that cut us with 1,000 cuts that feel like 100,000 cuts. Sometimes big stuff happens, stuff that devastates us. Like, say, a wife, a spouse of 9 years plus, walking away cleanly, like she was just going outside to water the garden and never coming back. Leaving a driveway with only one empty space, but a driveway as empty as it could be. The finality of the cutting and suffocating entanglement becomes so real we are convinced that we are stuck. In our hour of entanglement, the present feels infinite. Howling in our thoughts, the other mind reminds us that finality means from now until forever. It assures us that the pain goes with the infinity, by the way. Reeling from the onslaught, we forget how to measure life cycles. We forget about calendars and time. Forever hurts so deep, it seems to take us into another galaxy. When will it ever end has but one answer. Never. What goes on forever never ends. It is a final situation and stays final forever. When pain feels like forever, it is nearly impossible to remember we live in time, which causes change, which includes feelings and thoughts and more feelings, all of them always changing. Surviving the big stuff is so much easier said than done that we forget that we can use time to take the pain out of the infinite. Time gives us a chance to grieve, to wring out the psyche, a chance to exhale old energy, which helps to dissipate old ideas. Time gives us a chance to realize the world is not falling in on us. It gives us a chance to wail and heave, to operate slowly like zombies, if that will help us figure out how not to hurt in our infinity. This, by the way, brings to mind another saying we humans spout with regularity. This familiar saying begins with time and ends with on your side. Can you guess it? Is. Between time and on your side is. Time is on your side. You've heard of it. Time is on your side. So remember, take the time to use time. Now don't forget to remember. And drink plenty of fluids. And get plenty of rest. And bathe regularly. But stay naked afterward for a little longer than usual. Close your eyes and say to yourself, I am completely bare naked. Which counts even if you have socks on. But robes do not count unless they are completely off. Open robes, they're airy, but you are not naked while wearing one, even if it is open. Just don't make that the issue with your neighbors. Thank you. Time then becomes our ally. We can use it to remember where our feet are on the planet Earth, which is big, upon which are lots of people who lose and live. That's how we do. Yet beware, time gives us time to begin listening to stories from the other mind. Stories about how we are devastated and about how our heart feels ripped from our chest. And although it is natural sometimes to feel devastated and heart ripped, these are for a period. The other mind likes to tell us they are permanent states. To believe such devastation is permanent can be like a terrifying sled ride at high speeds down an icy and dangerous hill. We forget we can roll off the sled. It is only when we are ready to die that we remember we can roll off. But often we do not. The finality of our situation seems so real, we believe we cannot jump off. And it is then we begin another level of struggle and anguish: denial. When we know we can roll off, we also know we will be hurt and will still be hurting. And we will have a long walk up the hill and will probably die later anyway. We think things like, what's the use in knowing time will heal me? It's still going to hurt, and it's never going to change back to the way it was. And the way it is not the way it's supposed to be. Why does it have to be that way, the way it is, and not the way it was? And why should I feel better about it never being that way again? Denial means continuing the ride in genuine fear for the outcome, in spite of the choice to roll off. Denial means forfeiting your choice, telling yourself you cannot roll off while the fear drives you to madness, when somehow you know you could roll off. Remembering time can help. Against all odds, against all stories from the other mind, against all conviction that your heart will burst from your chest at any moment and your pain will be visible for all the world to see. Against all comers, time can help. Time gives us a chance to struggle until we finally admit rolling off may save our lives. And even though we believe we want to die, we don't want to be dead. Now you might say, this time, Schelter, you're being somewhat heavy, don't you think? To which as a reply I may offer, you can bet your sweet bippy I am, though I would perhaps be mocked by those thinking that saying betting sweet bippies is an awfully stupid reference to make. It could be said and it would be true. Betting sweet bippies is a stupid reference to make. As well, sometimes life is somewhat heavy. And sometimes when we should accept the truth that is upon us, we still flail against the entire realm of existence. Our angst, the long suffering of a lifetime. Our experience surreal. Our longing for a different circumstance like a hot knife in our brain. Now you might be thinking at this time that if you could distract me from these oversized matters, you might get me to talk about lighter stuff. Like how macaroni and cheese used to come in more curved noodles. And how these days a lot of it comes with plain straight noodles. You might also ask me about the tiny insects that always land on my writing tablet or book pages when I'm sitting outside in late summer. And if they are really too tiny, as I say, to shish kebab with my ink pen. And did I really leave a little ink mark on one's wing when I tried to nudge it off my writing line? And is it really so that I happened to notice the ink mark as the tiny bug stretched his wings before folding them and putting them away? The answer is yes. But were you to try such a ruse to get me off the topic, I would play along and tell you that the variety of tiny insects around at the end of the summer is impressive and amazing. And if you sit still long enough, they will come around and share existence at close range. I would say that even when you walked around the yard, clouds of insects would rise and fall at your footsteps, like dust or pollen from the grass and other plants that grow in my lawn. Or your lawn if that's where you're walking. But I would ask you, before you got me talking about other things, like my neighbor who streaks in his backyard every full moon, and how once he's run back up on the porch, he spanks each butt cheek twice before entering the house, I would ask you if you are prepared for the web spinning factory of the other mind, which produces more webs for each of us than we could disentangle ourselves from in a lifetime. I would warn you that the other mind does not produce and package for delivery its sticky webs. Instead, it flings them off the conveyor line, one after the other. Most of the webs miss, or hit us and slide off. Others we fight with, but avail ourselves relief in short order. Some webs snare us, but good. Some webs blindside us. Some webs come so fast that fear and panic flash like fire in our regular minds, sending a wave of unease throughout our very body cells. Some webs bring truth we believe we cannot bear. Clear as moonlight, the truth hits us, searing our psyches with anguish, making us want to run as far and fast as we can to be elsewhere, only to anticipate the pain of our inevitable but necessary trip back to ourselves. Now here you might say, whoa, Schelter, again with the macabre overtones. What about your usual topics like body odors and nature's chemical recipes for distaste? Or how about your chicken and juice harp routine entitled Chicken Can't Cook Gumbo? How about that one, eh? To which my adequate reply would suggest that you speak of side topics and light preferences. Though I would admit my chicken plays a mean juice harp. To which you might say, yeah, Schelter, that's more like it. How about that old chicken? Still crapping on stage, is he? Yes, I would admit, but I don't mind. It seems a small task in order to hear him do improvisation in the closing phrases of his juice harp swamp version of Swanee River. That cooks. Yes, you would say, chickens and juice harps on the Swanee River. Sounds peaceful, don't you think? By this time, I would have wizened to your tactics, and I would reiterate, you speak of side topics and light preferences. I speak of the reeling of devastation. I speak of infinity ingested with pain. I speak of weeping and swirling through the vast and nightmarish space of the other mind. I'm speaking of truths we cannot escape, but which we believe we cannot bear, of how the other mind convinces us they are absolute, that they are the only truth, that our perception of truth as one alternative among many cannot be true. And if it is, it only appears to be a lie to ourselves. Sometimes, even when we know beyond knowing that there is an alternative, we still believe against ourselves. We know better, yet we wail in resistance. We cannot believe our thoughts because our feelings feel so final. Our feelings feel absolute and infinite. Sometimes the absolutes from the other mind are devastating. Sometimes they are debilitating, and we are toppled by their oppressive weight. Sometimes the absolutes from the other mind put a crack in the dome of our thinking that seems to want to suck us out into the forever of dark space. A crack that promises us pain, and anguish, and sorrow, and crying, retching, and closed eyes, fetal positions. Sometimes the messages from the other mind are so much we have to carry them around in a wheelbarrow. Now here, you might jump at the chance to steer the program from such weighty topics to something more palatable, and so you might say, wheelbarrows are nice, eh, Schelter? Do you like wheelbarrows? What's your favorite color? Do you like the metal ones with the wooden handles, or the new strong plastic kind? And do you know, Schelter, do those plastic wheelbarrows have rubber tires? Do you know? To which my reply, based on my personal knowledge of my personal knowledge, would be non-committal. I can only assume, I would say, by virtue of what I know about wheelbarrows, that the new plastic ones would have rubber wheels. Then I would tell you in no uncertain terms, but I don't care about wheelbarrows or rubber tires. I'll use a basket weave wheelbarrow with spiky sticks for wheels, if that's all I can find. Then I would go on, seemingly unable to help myself. Sometimes the spider webs of the other mind are near fatal. Sometimes they come with choking gas and stinging like an electric fence, feeling like they weigh 1,000 pounds yet are shrinking in tightness around us. Sometimes the other mind gets what it wants. With severity and malice, it rocks our world. We are sent spinning through the outer space of the other mind on a high-speed roller coaster in open air, whipping and swirling through a haunted Halloween house of horrors. Faces loom in from the darkness, looking closely at us with piercing eyes. Distant, deep, rumbly voices mock our fright. They yell accusations as we pass. And more than hear the voices, we feel them. And we are instantly convinced we are at fault. We hurt so bad we want to be squeezed out of existence. Sometimes the other mind says falling and weeping are the answer. Sometimes temper tantrums seem in order. Always, the other mind tells us there is no escape, and it proves it by taking us deeper and deeper into our pain until we believe we can glimpse eternity. Yeah, Now, when changing our other mind, it's not about moving tiny insects out of our way, or when it is not about being pleasant when we feel grouchy and everything seems stupid, or when it is not about winning friends and influencing people, then we might find that changing your other mind is a method for survival, a handhold in time so we cannot be sucked into infinity. When changing our other mind is not about a preference or a measure of effectiveness, it might be admitting that somewhere behind the last thought, somewhere past the last retching sob, beyond what seems to be our infinity filled with crushing sadness, there is the regular mind looking back at the wailing self, watching even as the other mind now hovers in trepidation. Sometimes, truly changing our other mind is kind of like letting ourselves be sucked through the crack in thought, flung out into space, because we know there is a man out there with a flashlight. He is Albert Einstein, and he is on a beam of light telling us everything is relative and how our perception affects reality. Look what I can do, he says, and holds out his hand and turns the flashlight on. Do you see how the speed of the flashlight is relative to me and not to the beam of light? Is that not how we operate so often in life? As though the pain in our infinity seems absolute when it is actually only relative to us? Watch now what I can do. You see that? I turned the flashlight off. Now at this point, do not assume Einstein turned his flashlight off as a way to show us how to turn off the suffering, to show us how to click off the emotional charge that threatens to devour our very life force, to show us how to remove ourselves from the relative perception, and that when we see our pain as relative to us and not as an absolute reality, such as the speed of light is an absolute reality, then we can relax. Then we can see that moving with the light is moving with the universe, and that moving with the universe is better than dying 1,000 deaths per day while yet we live. And I say, do not assume as much about Einstein and his flashlight, because he is a witty chap who would likely tell you that he has turned off his flashlight because he does not know how he would replace the batteries, were they to die, from out in space at the end of a beam of light. Changing Your Other Mind is the name of the program. Those with ears to hear, thank you for listening. Those with ears to hear parts and think a bunch of other stuff, thanks for listening and thinking. For the rest of you, whatever you've been doing, thanks at least for tuning in. Tuesdays, 2:20 p.m., here on FlintTalkRadio.com is where you can find us. Your _othermind@yahoo.com is where you can contact us. Yes, the website is still coming, so as listeners, you keep coming as well. Thank you. That's all.